Radio.
We're concerned because as a democratic nation, our local governance structure doesn't seem to reflect democratic tenets. We still have mayors or metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives nominated by the president under criteria that is unclear. And we've just had 26 of them replaced by people we don't know for reasons that have not been communicated. We feel left out of processes that affect us directly, and that is definitely not what democracy seeks to achieve. Let's try and understand why it's happening this way and how we can make it better. Our guest, Professor Ransford Gyampo, is a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, and Dr. Oduro Osae, who is a local governance expert and analyst. Both of them join us over the phone right now. Good morning to you, Prof and Doc.
Good morning.
If it's all right, Prof Gyampo, I'd love to start with you. The president used to explain to us the reasons behind his appointments. That has long stopped. But looking at the political climate, what is your analysis of the reason for this reshuffle, if you will?
All right, thank you. When this president started and was given the mandate to govern in 2017, the caliber of people he appointed to office, he took time to explain to the good people of Ghana their pedigree, their credentials, their qualifications, and why he thinks they are the right people to be in government with him. Of course, he is not really interested in reshuffles, and so there's been we haven't had much reshuffle, and for us to say that when he was reshuffling or asking them from office, why he did not explain to us. And so I thought that given that the president always would want to explain why he appointed people, he would also, at least as a show of courtesy, it's not duty bound. The Constitution does not say he should explain, but as a show of courtesy, he could have evolved a certain convention to explain to the good people of Ghana that, look, these local appointees have done X, Y, Z, so would want to replace them. He's not done that. But, elsewhere, conventions are even powerful than constitutional provisions. That's why Britain operates an unwritten constitution that is largely the coming together of various unwritten conventions that they use. And so I was a bit taken aback when I just heard that the president has just asked some MMDCEs, and then we were completely left out of the equation in terms of knowing what exactly may have happened. But like I said, constitutionally, the president cannot be faulted too much for having done anything wrong. Just that as we are evolving our democracy, it would have been nice for him to have said that they have done X, Y. Now, my own investigation and analysis points to something. If I have looked at all the MMDCEs who have been asked, and I have looked also at how they conducted themselves in the lead up to the parliamentary primaries of the MPP. If you recall, the MPP made a rule that if you are sitting MMDC, you are banned from contesting for a parliamentary seat. The rule didn't say that you cannot also campaign in parliamentary primaries. And I see that virtually all of those who have been asked are people who publicly shown or publicly campaigned against the MPs who have been, the parliamentary candidates who have been elected. These MMDCs, you can see that virtually, I'm not saying all of them, but virtually all of them actively and openly defends openly against those parliamentary candidates who have been elected on the party's ticket to be able to contest the 2024 parliamentary elections. Now, politically, I am thinking that the president is of the view that if I don't do something and these guys who actively campaigned against the parliamentary candidates who have won are kept in office, then they would work to sabotage or undermine the campaign of the parliamentary candidates. In that case, then the party will lose out in parliament in the 2024 parliamentary elections. And so, why don't I get them out so that the parliamentary candidates would have their peace of mind to campaign, so that in the 2024 parliamentary elections, the party will do better. I'm thinking that this may be the reason, and the president himself has not spoken about this, but if I look at it politically, that is one of the plausible explanations that can come out. But the question then I ask myself is, should an MP who is serving well the interests of his people at the various, at the locality, at the municipality, at the district, at the metropolitan area, should that MP be sacked simply because he campaigned against a parliamentary aspirant who has won? If he's doing very well in a manner that improves the lot of the local people, should he be kicked out simply because he did not see eye to eye with someone who may have been elected as the parliamentary candidate on the ticket of the MPP? I think the answer is for all of us to brainstorm and to give. But the point is because of some of these challenges, that's how come some of us, right from the one, have argued for the direct elections of metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives, so that they will be insulated from some of these practices. What we are saying essentially is that the people at the grassroots are very wise in determining who must lead them at the national level. But when it comes to determining who must lead them at the local level, they are suddenly ignorant and they don't know who would be able to better serve their interests. And so that decision should be made by the president. I think this is absolutely absurd politically. And so may this reintroduce the call for MMDCEs to be directly elected by the local people, so that we can insulate them, particularly those who are doing well, from some of these practices of the executive president. So I'm saying that we do not know why this thing has happened, but again, the Constitution does not force the president to explain why he is taking this decision, and so you cannot really fault him. But at the same time, my own analysis show that these MMDCs were people who actively campaigned against the parliamentary aspirants who have won. And so maybe the intervention is to ensure that these MMDCs do not go out of their way to frustrate these MPs, parliamentary aspirants. They don't go away on their way to frustrate them. If they do, then it means it is the party that will bleed in the parliamentary elections of 2024. And so then politically, that may be the explanation, or that may be the way the president may want to go, just to be able to ensure that the parliamentary fortunes of his parties are in a way kept, intact in the next election. But I'm asking myself, how about the MMDC who are serving very well the interest of his people? Will it be wise for us to just kick him out simply because he actively campaign. He exercised his democratic freedom of choice by campaigning against an MP aspirant who has been elected. I think it's something that we all have to brainstorm and proffer a response to. I think preliminary comments, these are the preliminary comments I can make. And if you have to come back to me, I'm ready. I'm on standby.
Right. Thanks, Prof. Dr. Oduro Osae, I mean, the president has sacked 26 of the 261 MMDCEs. Do we have an objective way of assessing the performance of these MMDCs to determine whether those who have been, removed deserved to be sacked, and whether those who were not sacked deserve to stay?
All right, thank you very much. And let me say good morning to your listeners, and good morning to my friend and brother, Professor Ransford Gyampo, on the other line. Let me say that the reading I have with the nomination and then the appointment letter that came out, I noticed that the president has revoked the appointment of 24 MMDCEs, but appointed 26. My understanding is that the additional 2 were 2 from Chifu Himan Lower Dentra and Adaklu assemblies. These MMDCs have resigned on their own.
Right.
So what it means is that the sacking is for only 24.
Understood.
Now, whether or not there is an objective way of assessing the performance of MMDCs, let me say that under Article 243 of our 1992 Constitution, the chief executives are not representative of the president. I always say that people must understand that the chief executives, though appointed by the president, but under Article 243, Clause 2C, they are the chief representative of the central government. They don't represent the president. They represent the central government. So the central government work is there. And you will realize that the letter the president wrote, he attentioned the local government minister, who is then expected to do further communication to these MMDCs. Let me come to the objective way of assessing them. What I know is that there is what we call a district assembly performance assessment tool that is used to assess the district assemblies on an annual basis. A number of indicators goes into this assessment. We have the governance, we have financial management, we have leadership, we have the assembly. And the entire assembly management system is assessed through the district assembly assessment to what we call DPAT. There is a second assessment that is normally undertaken by the Ministry of Local Government. They have a dashboard on which these local government leaders, that is the MMDCs, upload their performance according to agreed indicators on the dashboard. I am also aware that last year, the Internal Audit Agency worked with the Center for Local Governance Advocacy to publish an MMDA Public Financial Management Performance League Table. Though this has not been mainstreamed into the system to have MMDAs assessed according to the way they manage their finances, I want to believe that these are, or this is part of the way we assess MMDAs by way of performance. So my response is, yes, I think there is an objective way of assessing MMDCEs. But my challenge here is that why are we not allowed to elect our local leaders? And this is where I would agree with Professor Gyampo that, look, the last leg of our local democracy is to allow citizens to elect their MMDCEs, especially when the MMDCEs are supposed to be chief representative of central government at the local government level. 2, you realize that under Article 243, the president appoints these chief executives, but they cannot assume office unless they have been approved by 2/3 majority of the members of the assembly. So they go through nomination by president, approved by the assembly, and then they are appointed. How come that when we are revoking the appointment, These tutors do not have a say in the revocation. These are the gray areas in our law I think we should resolve if we really want to see the democracy we are enjoying at the national level replicated properly at the local government level. As at now, I want to believe that local democracy is suffering because we don't give citizens the opportunity to elect chief representatives of central government in the presence of MMDCs.
Now, Dr. Oduro Osae, you were technical advisor when we wanted to elect MMDCs. You were technical advisor to the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development at the time. I want to understand something. So, I mean, publicly we all knew that the president talked about a lack of consensus because he wanted partisan election of MMDCEs. You have been at the forefront of this for a very long time. Help us understand what the people want, what would be in the best interest of the people when it comes to electing these MMDCEs. Okay.
First, what the people want. When we went round and toured the whole country, majority of citizens want their MMDCEs directly elected.
Okay.
Now, whether to elect them on partisan basis or not is another matter. Because as for citizens, they want their MMDCEs elected. But the truth of the matter is that because if we elect them on partisan basis, it will require a referendum, and there is no consensus on the referendum. That issue was dropped. But I must say that we can amend Article 243 of the Constitution because it is not entrenched. You require a certain percentage of parliamentarians to approve it. So we can start with the process of electing them on non-partisan basis. But here is the challenge. With the assembly member election, we have all said and indicated in law that it should be on non-partisan basis. But we all saw what happened last year when people had their political party cards coming out clearly, where we had political parties organizing primaries to put up candidates for a local government election, which is supposed to be non-partisan. What it then means is that there is a call for politicization of local level elections. If you transfer that argument to the election of MMDCEs, then it seems to me that citizens want their MMDCEs elected on partisan basis. But the challenge is this one. To elect them on partisan basis, you need a political party to lead the process, and you need parliament to have a consensus. It is the political parties who benefit or loses if we elect them on partisan basis. If you have a party in power who thinks that, look, if I elect them on partisan basis, majority of the MMDCEs can be won by a certain political party, whether in opposition or not. So, for instance, let's assume that the NPP is in power now. If we decide to elect MMDCEs on partisan basis, NPP can win majority of the MMDCE seats in the Ashanti region. NDC can win majority in the Volta region. That will introduce checks and balances in the system. And I tell you, this is what the political parties do not want. Because the current arrangement helps them. They are able to, as soon as they win elections, 261 jobs are available for their followers. So they don't want to lose it. And this is where I commend the sitting president for making that bold decision to say that I'm prepared to hand over this power so that we elect them on partisan basis. That is not helping. So I think that, look, citizens, we have to rise up to the occasion. It is the political parties who benefit if we don't elect them on partisan basis. And it is our democracy that suffers. Because if we can elect the president on partisan basis, MPs on partisan basis, why can't we elect the chief executive who is closer to us, who is to bring development to us, so we hold him accountable? So every 4 years, he comes back to us to secure our vote, and then we ask him questions. What have you been able to do when we gave you the mandate? But if we are not able to do that, and we leave it in the hands of the executive, this is what will happen. That is why we see that development at the local level is suffering, but development at the national level somewhat is progressing.
Dr. Oduro Osae, before I bring in Prof. Gyampo, you know, you're saying that majority of Ghanaians want the election on partisan basis. Is it majority of Ghanaians or majority of politicians? Because I know there are surveys by CDD which confirm that nearly 80% of Ghanaians were kicking against electing them on partisan basis. So is it not the political class, I mean the members of the political parties, that wanted partisan?
All right.
What did the people want?
Well, the survey we conducted showed that before, in 2020, when I was leading this campaign to have MMDCEs elected, after the president directed that it should be done, is that, yes, citizens want their MMDCEs elected. That is point one. Whether to elect them on partisan basis or not, it is left with the political parties and parliament to go about it. And you realize that that was the point we got to, and there was no consensus from the two major political parties to have the process progressed. So I am of the view that, as for the citizens, they want the MMDCEs elected, whether partisan or non-partisan. But the challenge now is whether to elect it on political party basis or not. And the decision rests with the two major political parties to reach a consensus and let us have it. But from where I sit as a governance person, I think that for democratic consistency, once we elect presidents on partisan basis and we elect MPs on partisan basis, we should have a consistent way of electing our local leaders on partisan basis. Not only MMDCEs, but also assembly members. And once we are able to do that, let us also abolish the 30% government appointee system so that we don't have politicians there. We have people who have been directly elected and who are accountable to the people. As at now, most of the people in the local government may not be directly accountable to the people, except for the assembly members. But some of them too, come in under the color of certain political parties, though illegal, but that is what is happening. So if that is what we want, why don't we translate it into law so we'll be able to save the situation?
Prof. Gyampo, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you think that if we proceed to elect MMDCs on non-partisan basis, it will somehow undermine the process? Are there downsides to doing it on a non-partisan basis?
Why non-partisan basis? If we do partisan elections at the local level, why are we calling for the kind of election that takes away partisan politics?
Well, the CDD survey suggests that that's what people want.
I think that if we are calling for direct elections of MMDCs, we should go the full hog. The local people are political animals too. And we cannot be tickling ourselves and laughing. We cannot be behaving like ostriches. We had people, top politicians, openly saying that, look, I'm going to win. We're going to win more seats, for our party in the district level elections. Just when we're assembly members election, we had so many top politicians who should know better openly now canvassing or campaigning for the assemblymen and women on partisan basis. And before then, right from when it was introduced, politicians found their way of infiltrating the conduct of such elections, and the people themselves know. And so you cannot put a superstructure of partisan elections at the national level on an infrastructure, local infrastructure that is based on sand, that is based on an arrangement or a belief that the conduct of such elections are non-partisan, knowing very well that partisanship or politicians would infiltrate, and the people themselves who campaign and go through such elections are themselves partisan politicians. So the point is that let's go the full hog, and that's how I also I was part of the Institute for Democratic Governance team as a research fellow then, and at that place we pushed for direct elections of MMDCEs on partisan basis, and I was excited that the President of the Republic of Ghana, Akufo-Addo, took on board that call, and wanted to pursue it. It's just that we couldn't have consensus. And I thought that was hypocrisy on the part of the political elite, saying that behaving behind the scenes in a manner that shows that they actively play a role in the local election process, and yet when it came to the crunch, when it came to the real decision making, they behaved, or they conducted themselves in a manner that gave the impression that should the idea be tabled before them, we were going to shoot against it. It was a purely partisan move, and I thought that the president, not wanting to be humiliated, decided to withdraw that process. But I think that we have come of age. Let there be direct elections of MMDCs, and also on partisan basis, because I'm privy to research findings that show that is what Ghanaians prefer.
Are these research findings different from and are they contradicting the CDD surveys?
I've not read the CDD survey, but as of the time we were pushing for direct elections of MMDCs about 3-4 years ago, the prevailing wisdom on the part of from the citizenry is that the way to go was to have that election conducted on partisan basis,
right?
Because in the national elections, we conduct national elections on partisan basis, and so there's no point in conducting national elections on partisan basis and saying that when you get to the local grassroots, we should do something different.
I stand to be corrected, but is that not what happens in, for example, the United States? When they are electing their mayors or their attorney generals, or sorry, not district attorneys and so forth, and circuit judges and so forth, it's not on partisan basis. Even though their governors and
senators
tend to be elected on partisan basis.
No, I think that I disagree. I mean, when you go there are people who would clearly show they are callous. We are Republicans, we are Democrats, and that is what drives the conduct of their elections.
Are you not concerned that if we go that way in Ghana, we might end up stifling independent candidates at local level who might want to get involved in local politics without necessarily joining a party?
Well, our constitution does not ban independent candidates from contesting elections. It's just that we are yet to have a truly independent candidate who has the pedigree to put himself out there for the conduct of such elections. I want to believe that you, the host interviewing me, given your pedigree and what you know, if you put out yourself there as an independent candidate contesting such elections, if people believe that you have what it takes to serve you, to serve their interests, they will vote for you regardless of the party that you come from. And so
but Prof, if you are right,
oftentimes,
if you are right that actually people prefer to vote on partisan basis, then an independent stands no chance.
No, please. People generally prefer to vote on partisan basis, but I'm saying that doesn't also mean that the people are so dumb to the point that if they see who can really champion their interest at the grassroots, they would shoot against that person. It's just that over the years, especially at the national level, at the grassroots, we have not seen much. But at national level, the independent candidates who have come in so far have not been people of that kind of pedigree who have wielded what it takes to wield or to sway the mindset of people in their favor. But I know that gradually or sooner than later, we're going to have independent candidates who are going to have what it takes, the pedigree, the needed qualifications and competences to be able to sway voters' mindset about them. Because generally, if you speak to so many people, even though they want to vote on partisan lines, there's a groundswell, or you have a critical mass of people who are also tired of partisan politics.
Right. We're talking to Professor Ransford Gyampo and Dr. Oduro Osae. It's all about, local governance and the recent appointment of 26 MMDCEs after 24 of them were sacked and 2 of them resigned. Professor Ransford Gyampo is a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, and Dr. Oduro Osae is a local governance expert and analyst.
So, let's get back and let me start off with you, Dr. Oduro Osae, since you've also talked about it. We can go ahead. Let's have the elections, on partisan basis. There shouldn't be a problem. But a lot of Ghanaians have asked this question, and I know you would have a say. Dr. Oduro Osae, are you happy with how partisan elections, particularly primaries in the political parties, are run?
As a Ghanaian, I will not be happy with what I hear as far as partisan primaries are concerned.
Okay.
This act me because of the profession, it cascades top down. So we have come to live with it. We would have to put in place a medium to long-term strategy to demonetize the partisan elections we see in this country. But since we have not gotten there, and what we have now is partisan level national elections, that is why we are advocating for a partisan local government elections. Before you went on break, I think your colleague asked Dr. Gyampo, Professor Gyampo, whether or not if we introduce partisanship into local level elections, it will not affect independent candidates participating. I must say that under our laws, independent candidates are not barred from contesting even national level elections, whether parliamentary elections or presidential elections.
Sure.
Rather, it will deepen local democracy, and then it will also give us the opportunity to grow the smaller political parties who would otherwise never or have the opportunity of even electing an MP or having a presidential candidate to implement some of the brilliant ideas they have. I always say,
but Doc, how do you work that out, Doc? If that is not happening on the national level, why do you think it will happen on the local level?
I'm getting there, please. You see, when you look at some of the smaller political parties, I always use Commander Edna Eguafu as an example. PPP, they always have some brilliant ideas in their manifesto. But because they are not able to get the opportunity to be elected as a president, they are not able to implement it. But I bet you, if we politicize the local level elections and we allow chief executive to be elected on partisan basis, and PPP put up a candidate at the Commander Edna Eguafu Municipal Assembly, they would be able to win that seat. That chief executive would have the opportunity.
But Doc, they've not won it in a parliamentary election. But let me just get to this point. You have just said you're not happy with the reports you hear when it comes to political party primaries. Now, if you were to elect MMDCs on partisan basis, they still will have to go through these primaries. One, wouldn't you hear the same report? Two, wouldn't these people now be committed and be accountable to their political parties, as we have seen members of parliament today even having to lose their seats just because they dare to challenge political parties?
Okay, the difference here is that once you are a chief executive and you are elected on partisan basis, though you come to the citizens to appeal for their votes, you would want to deliver on their mandate so that in the next 4 years, when you come back to them, they will vote for you. Remember, though you will be put there on the political party's ticket, but you need votes of the majority of the people.
And your party can decide not to send you back for re-election.
Yeah, your party can decide not to send you back for re-election,
exactly.
But there is also an opportunity for you to go independent. You see, what I'm driving at is, if the thing is not good at the national level, then we should abolish it. But insofar as we maintain it at the national level, I think the local governments or the local people also deserve same. Until such a point that we are able to disband it at the national level, then we can be bold enough to say that it is not good for the local government level.
Let me bring in Professor Gyampo. Professor Gyampo, we have complained about monetization in our politics. we have an opportunity to have non-partisan election at the district level, devoid of all the acrimony and monetization that we see in political party primary, and we want to change it and go for what we all say is bad?
There are democratic solutions to the monetization in the conduct of our elections. Nobody is pleased with the current practice that brings about the election of candidates who have legitimacy deficit. They come out because they were able to pay money. Last time I said I have no respect for any of the parliamentary candidates who have emerged from their parliamentary primaries. I have no respect for them because they won simply because they were able to pay more money. And that is it. It is undemocratic. Now, the solution to it is not to say in the conduct of other partisan elections, no, there shouldn't be conduct of partisan elections at the local level. That's not the solution. The constitution says we are multi-party democracy. And because of that, the conduct of our election is supposed to be partisan. And so if you are looking for the solution to the monetization of our electoral processes, we've said it time and again, one best democratic solution is public funding of political parties. And if you want me to veer into that, I can say a lot about how public funding of political parties will serve as ultimately a solution to the monetization, of our electoral processes. When we met with the political parties way back in 2007, 2008, and prepared a draft public funding of political parties bill, in the draft, one of the provisions was that there was a ceiling of expenditure beyond which, if you go, you are disqualified as a candidate contesting for any election. It's set a ceiling. And so if you fall, you run your campaign within that ceiling, afterwards, you are reimbursed with the monies that you have spent. And so it would then check people from spending, and overly spending. And there are mechanisms that were instituted or are still instituted in that draft bill to check the expenditure pattern of politicians who are seeking for elections. And so there are so many interventions that will check monetization of our elections. Part of the intervention has got to do with you and I openly naming and shaming. You and I using the console in front of us to speak against some of these things. We must say it. When I was at the IEA, one of our cliches that we used to tout to be able to bring about change in public policy is for us to say it over and again until you get the desired effect. And so it is also a democratic intervention for you and I to openly critique and to criticize and to speak against it over and over again with a view to exposing it, with a view to sensitizing Ghanaians and the voting public about how they sell their birthright, how they sell the dividends that are expected to accrue to them for representation when they accept money, when they accept being bribed to sell their birthright. I think we can do some of these things. So the solution is never to take away partisanship or partisan politics from the conduct of our local government elections. That is not a solution.
Prof. Gyampo, you say take away, but actually our constitution already finds wisdom in a non-partisanship, DC.
Unfortunately, the Constitution of Ghana is not the Bible. The Constitution of Ghana, it is not the Quran.
But it
even
is
the Bible
Constitution,
and Quranic injunctions have been subjected to arguments against some of the provisions.
Yeah, but Prof,
that was the reason why in 2010, in 2010, I think 2009, 2010, we did a study at IE. We call it the Democratic Consolidation Strategy paper, which sought to audit the gaps in Ghana's democracy and sought to also make proposals for reform. One of the challenges we found was that even though the 1992 Constitution has served us well, nevertheless, it contains provisions that hinder the maturation of our democratization process, and so it must be reviewed. That was what we found. We saw the idea to Prof. Samuels, and then he started the Constitution review process. Unfortunately, the process has been stalled. But the point is that the Constitution does not contain biblical provisions that must not be questioned. It was crafted by human beings, and it has so many provisions that hinder the maturation of our democratization process. One of such provisions is the fact that they sought to insulate the conduct of local government elections from partisan politics, knowing very well that it is difficult to do that, and people are still doing it.
Yeah, Prof. The only point I was seeking to make was that since the Constitution already provides for non-partisan election of DCEs, it is not correct to say that we are taking away partisanship from the DCE election. We are rather seeking to introduce it. Is that not right?
Well, we are seeking to introduce it, and you are saying the Constitution provides that it shouldn't be there. And I'm saying that the fact that the Constitution provides that it shouldn't be there does not mean we cannot, as thinking society, as thinking human beings, take issues with those constitutional provisions. After all, the constitutional provisions are not biblical injunctions.
Okay. Now, Prof, you talked about ceiling. So you've talked about, a ceiling on funds that you can use. Now, how would that work at the primary level when it comes to political party primary? Help us understand.
Well, it works perfectly well. Look, I went to University of Cape Verde to go observe the conduct of their student elections, not local elections, student elections, and they had a proposal, or they have a law or a bylaw that publicly that funded the activities of contestants in that student election, and they set a ceiling. They told you that yes, you can spend afterwards. The student organization would reimburse you, but you cannot go beyond the ceiling. And so they look at the kinds of things you do and quantify it to be able to determine whether you've gone beyond the ceiling or not. I was there. The front runner in that particular election, it's about 7 years ago, the front runner in that particular election was disqualified because they checked and they looked at the billboards that had been mounted, the T-shirts that had been distributed, and other paraphernalia that had been shared, and they could quantify and say that no, you've gone beyond it. And so my point is that in the conduct of parliamentary primaries, we are there. We see the giant billboards. We see the monies that are surreptitiously shared, and sometimes because people are violating the rules of impunity, they come out openly to even say the amount of money they shared. They come out openly to say that I shared TVs and bicycles. You didn't vote for me, and so I'm going to ask you to refund or return those things. We saw people who had televisions customized with their pictures and emblems and symbols. We saw it, and you could just do a simple mathematical calculation of how much each one cost and multiply by the number of delegates that was going to be distributed to, and you have a fair idea of how much one candidate is spending. So, and this, you see, apart from the monies that are given, Nicodemously, that sometimes you don't see, there are sometimes monies that are given with images of contestants embossed on them, and all that. We can do this actual mathematics of some of these things that people do just to solicit votes, and then we'll be able to have an idea of how much they have spent, and do a comparison with the ceiling that may be set with how much may have been spent, and based on that, we can disqualify people.
And who will be in charge of the disqualification? The political parties?
I'm telling you, the output of our electoral processes now are becoming nauseating. The output of our electoral processes have nothing to do with the expression of popular choice of the people. The output of our electoral processes are now becoming undemocratic. You see people emerging as having been elected, but completely they bought their way into the process. They bought their way into the outcome, of the process. It's simply because they were able to pay more money. But democracy in a developing country like ours must thrive on producing candidates who have what it takes to fight, to put in place tangible, proactive mechanisms and policy prescriptions that will be able to effectively fight and extricate us from the quagmires of poverty and underdevelopment. Democracy in a developing countries like Ghana, must never have room for people who would just be elected simply because they have enough money to buy their way.
Professor Gyampo, do you trust that in this country, Ghana, will be prepared, be it the political parties or whichever body, to disqualify these persons who spend more than the ceiling?
Look, if we want to do it, we'll do it. I remember.
We haven't done it in this country.
I remember. Well, it must start from somewhere. That is why you and I continue to exist. That's why maybe God has not killed us, because He believes that if we know the right thing and we want to be pontificating on it, maybe we'll be making the right incursion and we'll be making the right influences in the psyche of people. And so we cannot resign ourselves to fate. We cannot throw our hands in the air in despair. Once upon a time, there was a chair of electoral commission called Oduro Osae, who wanted to ensure that our electoral processes our electoral rules were implemented. In so doing, he decided to outlaw certain election machines that are parading themselves as political parties. He was going to do the right thing, just that he didn't get the support of all of us. And so that thing fizzled out. And so if initiatives that are aimed at sanitizing our processes are going to be tabled, are going to be on earth, and we are going to all be in support of it, I think we'll be making giant strides in consolidating our democratic gains. We shouldn't resign ourselves in faith, and we shouldn't throw our hands in despair, and we should not be so filled with hopelessness to the point that what is bad is made to be the norm, and then we'll pander to it. No.
So, Prof, in your view, we must first publicly fund political parties.
Public funding of political parties is something that both political parties have agreed on.
Yes, Prof. So
it was something that was mooted, an idea that was mooted
Prof,
by
if I may ask my question. So your view is that we must first publicly fund political parties, then second elect MMDCEs?
Yes. We must, if we do not want the monetization of our electoral process,
okay,
one intervention is public funding of political parties. If you read the draft bill, I didn't know we're going to be talking about this.
No, I just wanted to know the order in which we must do it. The order in which it must be done. So first, we must publicly fund them. Then second, we look at electing MMDCs on a partisan basis.
MMDCs should be done on partisan basis. It was the view of the certain president, just that he didn't get the support. I don't think that we should throw our hands in despair. It's something that must be reintroduced or be revisited. It will help our democracy.
Right. Dr. Oduro Osae, so for you, what is step one?
Thank you very much. For me, I think we can do it concurrently. We can initiate the process to have MMDCs elected on partisan basis, and then also work to nationally fund political parties. But we should not confuse the issues. As soon as we say we are electing MMDCs on partisan basis, what it means is that we are calling for an amendment of Article 248 of the Constitution, which allows political parties to sponsor candidates for elections to local government units. So we should know what we want. It is not about only election of MMDCEs, but what we are calling for is a politicization of local government elections to allow political parties to sponsor candidates to the local government level, the MMDCEs and the assembly members. And what we are calling for again is, once this goes through, it will require an amendment of Article 248, and also, I think Article 55 also, which debars political parties from sponsoring candidates. And once that is done, then it should not be limited to only MMDCE. We should also elect assembly members on partisan basis, and then we should also abolish the government appointee system. Previously, the original intention of having government appointee system into the local government, the assemblies, is to make available to the assemblies some skills, competencies, and expertise they ordinarily will not get through an election system. But on hindsight, I think that, look, that whole idea, has not materialized as we expected it. So why don't we abandon it and say that we are amending Article 248 of the Constitution? Political parties can sponsor candidates to local level elections. And then we also amend Article 243 of the Constitution to include chief executives elections. So step one, amend Article 243 to have chief executives elected. Step two, initiate the process to amend the constitutional provisions that debars political parties from sponsoring candidates to local level elections. Point three, amend the relevant laws that also prevent political parties from sponsoring candidates to local level elections. And then you can do that concurrently with an amendment of our relevant political parties law or election law to allow for state funding of political parties. Once we go through this, it will help. I am mindful of the referendum requirement, because the standard is so high that if you want to amend an entrenched provision, you need 40% of the persons entitled to vote in that referendum. And out of the 40%, you need 75% of those 40% to say yes. Then after that, you come to the Parliament, and Parliament would also require 2/3 majority for that bill to pass. The standard is very high, but I think we are up to the task. If that is what we need to improve local level democracy, to be in tandem with national level democracy we are enjoying today.
Okay, so just to sum up, in order to do things the way you suggest, which is, partisan election of MMDCEs, we'll first need a referendum. We need to amend other parts of the Constitution that don't require referendum. We'll need to amend existing laws on, political parties' involvement in local elections.
There's a roadmap, my brother.
Yes, I'm going through. If you permit me. Okay. Then we would have to find money to actually publicly fund these elections. On 3 levels: presidential, parliamentary, and MMDCEs. Currently, we have 2 levels, and we can't fund publicly, but we will now have 3. We would have to do all of these in order to elect MMDCs on partisan basis. But if we want to elect them on non-partisan basis, we can pretty much do that immediately, can't we?
Yes, we can. We just have to amend Article 243, and that will require 2/3 majority of Parliament to have that article amended, since it is a non-entrenched provision.
So is it not a quicker way to get democracy, entrenched at the local level?
That will not be a quicker way, because once you amend Article 243, you are going to elect them, but not on partisan basis.
That's right.
You get the political parties coming in as they have done with the assembly level election.
Okay. Well, I want to say a big thank you to both of you. Certainly had an engaging conversation with Professor Ransford Gyampo, who is a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, and Dr. Oduro Osae, who's a local governance expert and analyst. We appreciate your time, both of you.